Now I want to talk just a little bit about your work as a therapist.
Okay.
So when I asked you to kind of think through some ideas about what could you talk about on the podcast,
Sure.
you had sent me a list of like body dysmorphia, compulsion, a few other things were on that list. So why don't we hit each topic
Okay.
and let's talk about like kind of how to understand those topics and then how we apply it to the work we do with our clients.
Sure. Absolutely. So the first one I would really like to talk about is the compulsion, right?
Okay.
And the compulsion, one day I asked my clinical director at Shades of Hope, Dr. Carrie Willey, and I said, if you were to write a book on eating disorders, what would you write on? And she goes, I would write on the compulsion. And I think that's something that you should focus on. And the compulsion is that I know it's wrong, but I'm still doing it anyway. It's that urge to do that eating disorder. And the thing is, I don't know how to stop. I don't know how to stop that compulsion, right? What do I do to stop? Do I even want to stop? And I think that's where it's very important, where recovery steps in to stop that compulsion, because I don't know how to cope, right? And so I need a whole different set of eyes on me, a whole different perspective to tell me and to give me some tools. And those are the tools that I want to give the clients when they first come in and they say, I can't stop this. And I'm like, no, you can. I want to give you that choice today. Now, this is is it going to be easy? No, it's going to be hard. You're going to have to really, really work at it. So you came in, you've had this eating disorder for a long time. It's not going to be an overnight fix. You're not going to be perfect. But the more times you don't give in to your eating disorder, the less power it's going to have over you.
Right. So you said compulsion is the idea of, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to anyways, or I don't really know what else to do.
Yeah.
Because in those moments, it may not feel like a choice.
Yeah, absolutely. I get a bad grade. Somebody makes a comment on what I look like. I don't have healthy boundaries. I believe everything what people say to me as concrete evidence true. And so I need that immediate relief. Let me go starve. Let me go exercise. Let me go around. Let me get those endorphins going, because I don't know how to handle people saying things to me. Yeah.
Okay, and so in therapy, even outpatient, compulsion exists even at the outpatient level of care. I think clients and families can see it more obviously at the higher levels of care. So, residential, inpatient, even partials, where clients and families will say it was almost like me and the eating disorder were one. I could not tell the difference between my thoughts and the eating disorder thoughts. And, I think that's like a very clear place where the person may not even realize that they don't want to be doing it or that it's hurting them. And then there's the point and I think it's like it's a nuance, but it's almost like this fork in the road where now the person in recovery has this understanding of how much it can control them, and they're really wanting to fight back.
Yeah.
And so giving in to those compulsions, because recovery is not perfect, it's a normal part of recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, especially in early recovery when you haven't built up your toolbox, you're going to have those compulsions. Things are going to happen. Life is going to happen. And so, it's what did I learn from it?
Right.
Did I go to dinner with friends too soon?
Right.
Did I get this pressure put on me? Was my boundaries not strong enough for this event that I went to? So it's important to be very aware of yourself and what you're going to feel comfortable with. And if you're even questioning it, it's okay to say no. One of the biggest things that we talk about is that no is a complete sentence. I didn't know that I could say no to people. I wasn't allowed to say no to my parents. I had to do everything that they said.
Right.
And then when I got to the real world, I remember working at a job and they would ask me to work these crazy hours and I'd say, yes, yes, yes. And when I first got into recovery, they were like, you can say no. And I remember the first time I said no, they were like, oh, okay. And then they walked off. It wasn't even that big of a deal. But it's the same with your eating disorder. You can tell it no. And no is a complete sentence. Most people say, oh, no, it's because I have to do. No, none of that. You don't have to explain anything. You
don't even have to say sorry for saying no.
No,
right?
Not at all. Not at all.
That's a big thing that people struggle with, even if they don't have an eating disorder.
Yeah, absolutely.
So boundary setting is very hard for people to do.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
So, one of the things that I like to tell families a lot of the times when they're trying to support someone is your child, right? If I'm working with the parents, your child will get to the point, if they're on the path to recovery, where they'll actually tell you, you know, hey mom, hey dad, I had a hard day today at lunch. Instead of eating it, I actually threw it away at school. You know, and parents have a hard time even imagining that. What are you saying? And like my kid may come to me one day and just tell on themselves.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a true sign of they gave into that compulsion, right? But they thought it through later and they're able to bounce back from it much quicker.
Yeah.
That's the process of recovery, right?
Yeah.
We don't ever think of recovery as something that just happens overnight and it's done and it's perfect. It's actually a whole process, something that you have to be intentional in and continue to work at every day.
Yeah.
And be self-aware, like what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Self-awareness is very important. And even the 12 steps, there's 12 steps. The first 3 are trusting your higher power, and step 12 is being of service to other people in recovery. There's a reason the majority of the steps are looking at yourself. Like 4 through 11 are looking at yourself, and that's what I have to remember. You know, I remember when I first got into recovery, you know, and my friends were like, what's the one constant in all your situations? And I said, I don't know, my mom, my dad. And they were like, no, it's you. I was the one constant. And
You had good friends, huh?
Yeah, I did.
They told you the truth.
They did tell me the truth. Absolutely. And I never realized that, you know? And I think that's when eating disorder recovery with parents, you know, when they go tell on themselves, it's like they've realized that I've been struggling with this, but I'm also the solution.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
All right, so what were some of the other things on that list that we were going to talk about today?
So I believe that was compulsion. The next one was relapse.
Relapse, yeah.
So relapse is going to be a part of the story, right? You know, my favorite quote that I tell all my clients is that, you know, I think the quote goes something like, they asked Thomas Edison, you know, how did it feel to fail 1,000 times before you came up with the light bulb? And he goes, I didn't fail 1,000 times. I just figured out 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb, right? And so I tell the clients, I said, you're going to figure out 1,000 ways on how not to do recovery, right? And it doesn't mean that they were failures. It's just like, this is not the way that I want my recovery to look like, right? So relapse doesn't mean that you're a failure. It doesn't mean that you didn't do it perfectly. It just means I'm going to take this as a learning experience. You know, there's a saying that says, you know, failure is not an option. No, failure is your greatest option.
Yeah.
Failure teaches you how to be more resilient. It teaches you to look at what didn't work. It teaches you on who I want to be from this moment forward. You know, I know what I look like in my eating disorder. I want to know what all the things that I can achieve in my recovery. Yeah.
Well, what you said, though, right, for those listening out there that are struggling with an eating disorder right now, you know, Joseph just pointed out, like, you know, people are very well versed eventually if they're in treatment, right, and they've been doing the work, they can understand what it looks like when they're in the eating disorder. But it may be more uncertain what it looks like in recovery, and that's very scary. Right? Because now what we're doing is we're asking clients to let go of that eating disorder and to live life without it when maybe at some points in their life it was the only thing that brought them comfort. So how do you work with clients on that? You know, going into this uncertain place, you know it's better on the other side, but you may not really believe it, or you're not ready because it's so scary.
Yeah. And so I tell them, you know, a lot of times in the back of their mind, they do want something better. A lot of times, one of the biggest things that I wish we talked about more in recovery, and I talk about with my clients, is that the key part before that is self-sabotage. So most clients don't even realize that they're sabotaging themselves, right? And I say, you know, you don't have to beat yourself up. That it doesn't have to be your normal. And it is scary. It's going to be scary to, you know, I don't know what my life is going to look like because I'm so used to beating myself up. But one of the biggest things that we talk about is, you know, just like you had control in your eating disorder, you also have the power to set the tone of what your recovery is going to look like. Do you want to go back to school? Do you want to open up an ice cream shop? Do you want to learn to play the guitar? I mean, it doesn't have to be scary. It can be what you want it to be. But the thing is, you have the tools. You have the tools. That's going to be the greatest predictor of what the future looks like for you. Now, the thing that we talk about a lot also is action. Recovery is all about action. So we can sit here and we can talk about, I call it the paralysis of analysis, right? You can analyze what you think life is going to look like, and then it goes into the what if. And they're like, well, what if this happens? And what if? And I'm like, great, I love playing the what if game.
Yeah.
What if you meet the person of your dreams? What if you graduate from college? What if you become financially independent? What if a unicorn walks in and starts talking to us? Right? So the what ifs are always, they always perceive them as negative. But I'm like, what if we flipped that script and made it into...
What if all these great things could happen and you're missing out because you're not even taking that first step?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And recovery is a program of action.
Right.
These are not theories. We're not talking about theories. We don't theorize that they might work. No, they do work.
Right.
They do work. They have to be put into action. CBT works, DBT works, right? All these things, all these tools that we've given you, they work.
They work, and we are confident as mental health providers. We do know that they work. We've seen them work. We understand how they work. We help people implement these strategies into their life all the time.
Yeah.
And we can see the transformation that these tools can help someone make.
Yeah.
Okay, so recovery and compulsion. What was the other stuff on your list?
So body dysmorphia.
Okay, body dysmorphia.
So body dysmorphia is, at its very basic definition, a preoccupation with a perceived flaw, right? And I tell people, your body doesn't know that it's being attacked. So when you're starving yourself, you're cutting, you're binging, you're purging, your body doesn't realize that you're attacking it, and it doesn't know the difference. And I tell them, people that love themselves don't do this to themselves, right? So, and I tell them, why do you hate yourself so much? Why? And so, one of the biggest things that I also talk about is that it's important to me. It's important the way I look. Looks are very important to me, right? And I'm like, great. And we're actually going to do this. I didn't talk to you about this, but I would like to do it because it's going to be off the cuff.
All right, so you're my therapist now?
So one of the biggest things that we do, or that one of the things that I do, I say, close your eyes. So we're going to close our eyes. And I want you to think about somebody that's very important to you, somebody that may have been a role model to you. And I want you to think about how you allowed yourself to feel around that person, why you looked up to that person, why that person was important to you. Do you have that person in your mind? Okay, so I want you to think of three words that describe that person. And, it could be a teacher, it could be a mother, a father, it could be a spiritual leader, it could be a sibling. Do you have that person in your mind? Can you think of do you have the three words of why they're very important to you?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to open our eyes now. So if you feel comfortable, tell me what those three words are.
Professional, confident, and smart.
Okay, so I've done this with clients hundreds of times, right? And I say, you're here hating your body. Body's important to you. But yet, when I ask them to do this exercise, they never say, oh, they have great shoulders, they have buff arms, they have muscular legs. It's professional, confident, and smart. And I'm like, the things you think are in your value system are actually not. And most of the time it's because they're honest, because they're caring, because they love me unconditionally.
It has nothing to do with their appearance.
No, not at all. Yeah, so they don't even realize, like, if all these things, I said, I could look at your social media and it's going to be all physical, but yet these are the things you crave, right? Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, because you want to be confident, you want to be smart, you want to be professional, right? That's important to you.
Right.
Yeah. So
very cool. Yeah. You just totally did a therapy session on me.
I did. Yeah, but and then I say, let's work towards that. You can be these things if you stop the negative self-talk, stop the hating yourself. Are there some things that you've gone through that you're not proud of, or maybe things that were done to you that does not give you a reason to hate yourself? And that's what we're going to work on.
Well, we earlier when we brought up body dysmorphia at the beginning, you defined it, and then you said, I'll sit there in session and I'll ask my client, why do you hate yourself? That question can shock anyone, right? I mean, that right there is a whole session by itself.
Yeah.
It's such a crazy question.
Yeah.
Why do you hate your what? I don't hate myself. What are you talking about? I mean, if you were asked that question, you would really have, and the person asking is expecting an answer, you'd really have to sit there and think deep about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So, I mean, that's a very powerful question.
Yeah, it really is. And most of the time, my mom said this, a bully said that.
Right.
And I said, so this isn't even your hate. This is something you took on. And just like you give a coat back, you can give that hate back to them.
Right.
And you can start treating yourself. And I even tell them, you know, the way I was taught was a lot of inner child work. So it's making that connection with that inner child. So I say, what do you imagine yourself as a kid? And they say, you know, they always say somewhere between 4 to 7 to 8. And I said, would you cut on an 8-year-old today? No. Would you give a beer to an 11-year-old? I wouldn't. That's so wrong today. That is not even within my moral value system. And I say, then why are you doing it to yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Why are you being a bully to yourself, or why are you being your own worst enemy at this point?
Yeah.
You know, when I work with clients who have body dysmorphia or body image issues, I'll always talk to them about also helping them understand that it's not really about this. It's about what's going on the inside, and we're just taking it out on ourselves when we start attacking our appearance, right?
Yeah.
And then usually what I work with clients on is when they come to session and they're reporting more or, you know, higher body image this week than last week, or just much more intense self-hatred or whatever it might be that they're going through, but it's ramping up. My first question usually is, well, what have you been doing to take care of yourself? Right? Because it's that compulsion, right? They may have gotten drawn back into it that week. And then they start realizing, well, I haven't been journaling and I haven't been following meal plan. And, you know, I called in sick and I just kind of worked out too much or whatever it was. But they're realizing, oh, snap, I fell back a little bit. There's a little bump in the road I've hit. And I'm not doing self-care. And so now the correlation, less self-care, less healthy coping skills equals more body dysmorphia, you know, in that given week.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know, the more self-care, the more I love myself, the more positive self-talk, the more better I'm going to treat my body. But, you know, it's we got to get to the core issue. Why are you cutting yourself? And, you know, cutting has always been to me, it's, you know, if I stub my toe or let's say I hit my hand on this microphone, I can register that physical pain, right? It's physical. I hit the microphone. But with cutting, there's a deep emotional pain, and I have to match that emotional pain with a physical pain. And to me, that's where, you know, self-harm comes in, and most people may not even realize it. They know it feels good to them, but they don't know why.
Right.
And it goes back to what's going on the inside.
Right. It's that deeper understanding.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing today.
Yeah.
This was awesome, Joseph. I really appreciate you coming on first and sharing your story and just putting yourself out there like that, because you telling your story is going to help so many people out there that are listening. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And then I really appreciate what you brought to the table in terms of your view of working with clients and your understanding of some of the issues that continuously come up when a client's in eating disorder recovery, and just the work that you do with the clients. I know that you're making a difference. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Before we end, is there anything else you want the audience to know?
No, not that I can think of.
All right. Well, then I hope that you come back again.
Yes, absolutely.
And there you have it. That's Red Clinic Podcast.